substance inside the sting that's actually physically injected into us when we do it.
It's amazing.
One spring years ago when I was doing a plant diet, every morning I would wake up and touch my third eye and let the vibrancy of this crystalline structure. And quartz is arranged in the way that it resembles almost identically the thing that they call our junk DNA.
This transmission is coming to you from deep in the jungles of central Maine. You are about to get high on spirit.
All right, we're going to talk about nettles. Urtica dioica.
Urtica dioica, yes. So welcome to High on Spirit, our podcast. My name's Ko. This is Dylan, and we are talking about plant medicines, connecting with the earth, healing modalities, and basically, how to raise our consciousness, raise our capacity for well-being, and unlock latent capabilities that are hidden within our connection to these plants.
The path of the earth practitioner.
That's right, brother. So, again, today's episode, stinging nettles, as they're known. Sometimes, they're avoided because, they can freak people out to some extent, but they're actually basically harmless in that sense, but they also have tons of benefits, so.
Yeah, they get a bad rap because of the initial bite, but once you can make a little bit of friends there, it's a plant with tremendous value for medicine, for acupuncture, as a cash crop, as a fodder for animals, as a nutritional supplement for your plants, as a fertilizer, and as a dye, and as a yellow pigment from the roots.
Nice. Well, the stuff pretty much grows like a weed, right? I mean, once it's established, it just keeps coming back, yeah?
Yeah, as long as there's a little bit of soil fertility, as long as the microbiome is going, yeah, it doesn't need much of anything. It's pretty happy that, they call it an invasive species. Whenever anybody calls something an invasive species, there's probably something going on there that's medicinal, that needs to be looked at. If the earth is pushing something up in that much vibrancy and abundance, there's usually a reason for it outside of what the first response would be.
Right, when we're just seeing it from that linear perspective, we don't have the long view.
Yeah.
Right, or the grand view.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, luckily for us, you happen to have a bunch of it growing around the property, so we're going to go harvest some, and then we'll talk about some of its benefits, uses, and different things that you can do with it, and how to cultivate it, and all that good stuff. So, hey, shall we go?
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to the nettle patch. What do we got here?
Some nettles here. There is some sting, but I'm not afraid of it. I like it. It's a good thing. It doesn't hurt at all. I'm picking this one back here. Looks a little cruel. Maybe we should break it off. They're ready to go. We'll spread out some of this seed here. Take my knife and cut off that so it doesn't look so like it's been abused.
So we're gonna make some
tea here.
Yeah, we're gonna make some nettle tea, and
there's all these little. We'll give you a close-up later, but there's all these little, they call them trichromes underneath, little hypodermic needles going right in, all the way up that long line there. Mix around, picking here, a little leaf here, a little leaf here. Some people are afraid to pick it at this stage. They say that there's too much silicate or silic acid in there. We're making tea out of it. I feel good about it. Everyone should feel it out for themselves. These pre-flowers, some of it's gone to seed, some of it isn't. Lots of phytosterols in there, lots of proteins, lots of omega-3s, lots of nutrients in general.
So we're gonna have a nice little tonic on our on our bellies this morning.
Yeah, there's probably as much protein and calcium as a glass of milk. There's serotonin in here. There's
really
acetylcholine in here. It's possibly lots of high-end tryptamines. Some sources say there's some 5-methoxydimethyltryptamine inside some of the stings. I can't find that in very much of the literature, but some of the literature says that. I think it has to do with how you communicate with the plant, how you sing to her. Our friend Michael Polarski, his song goes something like, Urtica diotica, we love ya. Urtica diotica, we love ya. That's her Latin name, Urtica diotica.
Urtica diotica.
Urtica diotica.
Urtica diotica,
Yeah.
yes. And I imagine you're getting some dopamine release too as those are stinging.
Yeah, there's a lot of serotonin. These stings, I mean, it's going to range a lot with the communication that's going on with the living form. As we know from the gorilla studies, if you're not going to tune in yourself intuitively, when the gorilla bites these leaves, in the moment where the tongue communicates with the plant, that plant is changing its bioenergy and its biochemistry to give me what I need, or to give the gorilla what it needs. The whole plant is rearranging its structure that quickly. So it's part of what we're going to go into here with the nettles and acupuncture. Is what the plant is giving you is so much about what you're giving it. And the arrangement of those phytochemicals are changing very fast.
So
very,
there's
very
an interplay, a
fast,
dynamic there,
instantaneously.
and then there's also going to be turning on and off of certain genes
Yeah.
within the ape or within the human being.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an exchange there for sure. The sting is very similar in some ways to a bee sting, but much more complex too, because there's the folic acid in there, the formic acid, but then there's it's the highest known source of acetylcholine. It's the only place in nature where acetylcholine shows up in its pure form, is inside these trichromes, inside the sting that's actually physically injected into us when we do it.
That's amazing.
One spring years ago when I was doing a plant diet, we'll get into what plant diets are later. Every morning I would wake up and touch my third eye and let the vibrancy of this crystalline structure. It's one of the highest plants in silica. And silica is arranged in a similar way as quartz. And quartz is arranged in the way that it resembles almost identically the thing that they call our junk DNA. Now there's something to ponder on. A quartz crystal and how it receives information and gives information. And our thing that they call junk DNA.
Yeah, it's like
has that
97.5% is what they
Yeah.
say.
They don't know what it does, but it's totally malleable.
That's what we think. Yeah, it's just like stem cells in the way that they can become anything, any cell in the body. Is that this DNA, this so-called junk DNA, has the capacity to become and to turn on or activate whatever particular qualities. And this is how we can sort of, unlock these Easter eggs, these abilities within us, these skills.
Yeah, and part of this is in here, is in these little stings. People are really afraid of it. They say that, the histamine reaction or whatever. And there's some there, but it never lasts. Even in the people that are really pissy about it, it doesn't last that long. And I've seen countless people get healed from arthritis, from sore muscles. But the amount of potential that's available in these injections in terms of acupuncture goes far beyond what we're talked about in the literature in terms of arthritis, that type of thing, because this is probably the earliest form of acupuncture, what happens with these nettle stings. I researched acupuncture extensively. And one of the old books talked about how it wasn't effective unless the needles were covered with the venom of the bufo toad. Now I'm not talking about the bufo toad from the Sonoran Desert. It's slightly different, but it does contain 5-methoxydimethyltryptamine in ranges of around 10%, where the Bufo olivaris.
It's like 30, isn't it?
Well, it's much higher. It's much higher. But the Bufo toe that they use in acupuncture, it contains a huge amount of steroidal compounds, very much similar to the nettle sting. The nettle sting is the highest concentration of beta sterols that I'm aware of. It's where China extracts it from nature. And they also extract the acetylcholine from the nettles. And the beta sterol thing is, it's a interesting patterning there with, you're going to find it in places of nature where there's a large concentration of monoatomic elements. The parts of the earth that are rising up, the levitational things, the thing that makes the aura, the part that glows off the plant, it's found in the pollen, it's found in the flower, it's found in the bark of the tree. It's hiding inside the polysugar chains that we'd find in medicinal mushrooms or aloes. The medicinal mushrooms like chaga are extremely loaded in it because they're in a symbiotic relationship with that levitational property of the tree. You follow me?
Yeah, like the earth chi.
Yeah, and how it's rising up in that cambium layer of the bark of the tree, and the chaga is working with the tree to keep the tree alive, and the tree is giving the chaga these monoatomic constituents.
Well, it's interesting that you point out the levitational capacity of that, because just like when we're practicing Tai Chi or Qigong, there's a weightlessness that takes place, and there's an effortlessness that you can rest your body weight on the uprising force of the earth chi.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's ubiquitous, and we all draw from it, and the conscious drawing from it is exponentially greater. So this stuff looks pretty prolific. Did you seed any of this, or is this just kind of like doing its thing?
It's kind of just doing its thing. I did bring nettle to the property. It was one of the first plants that I brought to the property, but it seems to spread. And where there's good fertility, it's very abundant. You'll find it along rivers, old farm sites. It's a very important medicine for men as they get older. The roots are extremely anti-inflammatory in the prostate region.
So we're about to make some tea there. Is that
This is a good amount for our tea here.
all right? Cool.
Urtica diotica, we love you.
All right. This kind of reminds me of Pilates, when you go to the Russian spa and they beat you with the oak leaves
Oh yeah.
in the hot sauna. Yeah.
Feel it?
Yeah, that's light. I walked by one and brushed one up against in the greenhouse not too long ago, and that thing really lit me up.
Those ones are real strong. And
Yeah.
They have bigger syringes and more medicine juice. The ones in the greenhouse. Yeah. And I had like an arthritis thing going on in my hand for a day or so. There was more of an energetic thing because I don't get arthritis. But I just brushed my hand against the nettles right there, and it was all gone. Just one little like accidental brush.
Huh. I can definitely feel that activating. This is actually quite nice. It's much more mild, but I could see if you were experiencing, serious stuff like this, you could easily just do, I feel like anyone could tolerate this pretty much.
Yeah, and
I think like some of the folklore maybe scares kids and things. If they run into some of those highly active ones.
Well, and if you aren't thinking about it, then the sting is more than it would be. And you're like, ow! But in reality, it's not bad.
Oh, that's really activating now. Just got to get it working.
And this plant is one that definitely teaches people Tai Chi when you're open to it. It opens up these lines of light. As you'll feel, as you let the sting saturate into your system, your whole body's going to grow in like the effect of the buzz, and there's going to be a settling and a noticing of all your energy channels.
Oh, it's absolutely the case. Yeah, I can feel that. It's just totally activated everything from my whole torso up and then grounding in.
Mm-hmm. I've spoken with some herbalists that believe that if you get enough sting in you, that it activates a channel where you start to release dimethyltryptamine in your system. I can't have an opinion on that one way or the other, except that I know that it is very opening.
Yeah, so I could definitely sense this being a fantastic way of opening and working through blockages in the various chakras, as well as, just anywhere in the body that, we can get our energy constricted.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally activating like that, just exactly like acupuncture.
Well, and if you study the lines at all, just look at a chart and the mirror reflection, you don't have to study it because the fractals of what is going on in your system, it's intuitively known. But if you look at the guides a little bit, it'll give you a relationship of how people have used these vortexal centers, these energy points in the past. And then you can learn on where you can let the nettles hit. Like right here is a great immune system point that actually affects in the tummy. Like when people have upset tummy, you hit right here. And it also affects up in the head and the forehead. It'll heal headaches very often, especially in small children. So it drops the energy very quickly to massage in here. It's L4, large intestine 4 meridian.
And this is safe to use anywhere, whereas acupuncture, they tell you to stay away from certain areas, but
I wouldn't have any fear of it, but safety, nothing is ever safe. So, but I've seen lots of people stung with nettles.
Safety is an illusion. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that once again.
The tea here is extremely nutritious. Nursing mothers, anyone that needs a nutritional boost, in a similar way that how the toad venom that we spoke of earlier, that they use on acupuncture needles in China, the other way that they use it a lot in China is with people that have a very feeble condition and they need a big boost because the toad venom is so high in steroidal compounds and dense and just this juice that gets the system sparked up. And the nettles has that same sort of effect. And the biochemistry, it's very similar.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because there was definitely an intense stinging area and stinging feeling in here. This response here. I was wondering about too. Activating like the kidney point.
Yeah.
Back here. Because sometimes that gets constricted, and that can be, when that's constricted, it kind of jacks your whole system because it's a main, circuit for that earth force to come through. Up the legs, and then that's mainly where it enters. That in the base of the spine.
Yeah.
So if either one of those is clamped shut, it can cause stagnation all throughout the microcosmic orbit and all throughout all the meridians.
Exactly, and the nettles, that's where most schools of herbology would kind of settle it in, is where it's most active. They would look at it in the kidneys, bladder area, but it's active all throughout the system.
And you said it was good for the prostate as a tonic and tea, but what about even directly activating that region for men?
I imagine it would be a very good use.
I suspect it would as well.
Yeah. No, the roots, it's a miracle cure for that condition for a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, I know some people who are suffering with that, so definitely going to spread the word, and hopefully this message gets out to more and more of our viewers and listeners, and we can expand our collective knowledge of the benefits of these miraculous plants. All right. Well, let's enjoy some tea.
So yeah, we can drink it like this, and you don't have to let tea go for a long time. Most people would, in the literature, talk about letting the decoction go overnight, and it does get a lot more dense in color, and you're going to get more of the heavier constituents, the proteins and the silicas. In this quick, non-boiling wash that we're doing here, we're getting more of the more potent alkaloids. We have more of a potential to get some of the acetylcholine and some of the serotonin, because you cook that stuff and you're not going to get it anymore.
Right, it's toast.
Yeah.
So were you looking like a green tea level, like 170?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. And then if you wanted to boil it more and get more of the denser stuff, like it's really high in
you could do a
iron.
second extraction.
Yeah,
right?
people will soak it for like 24 or 48 hours and get a real high iron wash. Or when I lived out west like 20 years ago, the Urtica dioica was slightly different there. It was a taller plant, and I'd make these big pots of it, big decoctions, cook it down all day till it got really thick, and it would be almost like maple syrup. It would be so sweet. And there was so much nutrients in it, I didn't really feel like I needed to eat anything else. There's stories of it being used, I forgive me, but famous Swami guru that fasted on nettles until he turned green. And said he attained enlightenment through this practice.
That's fantastic. So you're saying that potentially even you could cook this down to a paste and then use it as a sugar substitute, or some sort of a sweetener.
Yeah, I haven't seen all the nettles be that sweet, but some are.
Okay.
Yeah, some are. It is going to be a location and a seasonal thing, perhaps. And I know the ones in Washington have more poly sugars in them, complex sugar chains.
Okay, but these are pretty ubiquitous though, right? I mean,
They're all over the world. All over the world. And before I really had any knowledge of that, I was journaling about plants. Before I'd ever gone down to the jungle, I was around like 19. And there was a whole journal entry about nettles as something that would let us into the world of ayahuasca. And I was just train of thought, just letting it come through. And then when I went down to the jungle and I was working on the land that was given to me to work on, the nettles were the understory plant underneath the chacruna. The chacruna, the chacrunita, is the leaf that contains the active DMT. And so they don't use it down there. It's so strange. Like, they've been taught not to use it because of Christianity, because they say that rabbits eat green things and now you're civilized and you should eat meat. And so there's a strong need for remembrance of the green medicine. All over
break out of that culturescape.
Yeah.
Wow, it affects so much. When we think about the jungle, my concept a lot of times is just like, so much of it is intact, but in reality it's all been in contact with Western culture. It's all been influenced basically at this point.
Yeah, all of it. All of ours has. Yeah.
And we need to keep that balance and strike.
Yeah. Let's drink some tea. I got to find another cup. You got one cup there, but
okay. Well, I've got one.
All right. You got one too?
Yeah. Let me go grab it.
Okay. Great. It's just the perfect amount of nettles. When you do this quick wash, it's like still feels like you're drinking it fresh. Where if you want to get the antihistamine properties of it, you need to juice it or actually eat it raw. And you can roll it up, and the saliva does act as an antidote for most people to the sting. Like, it doesn't sting the inside of the mouth. You can roll it up and just chew it up. Or you can juice it. A little bit of juice. It can be harsh on the tummy, so I recommend going a little at first. But the antihistamine properties are there in its fresh form. Like, if you buy a good freeze-dried nettles pill, you'll get the antihistamine properties. And they're hard to find in nature. For people with allergic reactions to things, it's good to be able to find something you can use.
It smells almost like a potato.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's good. Almost tastes like a soup, like a broth.
Yeah.
Wow, you could cook with that, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll pick it, dry it, and then grind it up into grains like quinoa in the wintertime.
It tastes like it's got onion and celery and potato and maybe some carrot in there. It's basically a vegetable broth.
Yeah.
That you can make in 5 minutes.
It's extremely high in most of the minerals. Magnesium, it's really high in. Really high in vitamin K, in the B vitamins. Most of the B vitamins, there's a lot in there.
Those Bs that are so important to the various processes like we've talked about, to mitochondrial function and energy production, ATP and the electron transport chain.
Yeah.
So, we're getting the things that we need for our bodies to function optimally. You know, they say that, you know, basically, and we can survive on just rice and beans, the basic staple diet. It will give us all the essentials that we need for survival. But to optimally function, right, we need increased levels of the serotonin, the dopamine, the DMT, right, and all these other phytochemicals and micronutrients enhance these various functions, and they can stimulate things that are beyond what we can measure at this point, but they can be experienced. Like, I don't know if you could measure, I mean, there probably are some instruments that are able to, you know, see the subtle energies in their various flux and things. But for the most part, we don't have access to that science. Mm-hmm. But we can intuitively certainly go by that. And I'm certain that it's also affecting the cohesiveness and coherence of brain-heart function.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, if we're bringing intention to it, mm-hmm. and a sense of mindfulness as we are, you know, that in and of itself is adding coherence.
Yeah. The acetylcholine thing, it's the only place in nature, the sting. Again, I'm thinking about it because of its correlation with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and this whole phenomenon related to early onset dementia. I watched this TED Talk, and there was alarming numbers about the global population having this early onset dementia. And that's related to these low acetylcholine levels. Acetylcholine was the first neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter is just a word that we use for something that's signaling, a signaling response. It goes into more than that, but to think of like one thing being a neurotransmitter could be confusing.
Well, sure, they unlock certain keyholes, right?
Yeah.
They're like little, you know, they fit into these certain receptors and they turn on things mm-hmm. within our body brain.
Yeah. And the acetylcholine, it is that. It is the thing that turns on stuff. It turns on your whole life force, whether you're alive or not. Like, all of the venom that kills you, it's affecting the acetylcholine channels. Like the snake venom that will kill you, mm-hmm. it's going to flood your system with so much acetylcholine, you're going to go into a paralysis and be done. You know, pharmaceutical things that they use for helping people with Parkinson's has to do with acetylcholine reuptake inhibitors that can be found in nature.
So this helps to balance those levels? It contains acetylcholine, right?
It contains acetylcholine.
But not in copious amounts enough to do you harm. It certainly doesn't sting.
No, and it's questionable whether you're getting acetylcholine in the tea or not, because it's in the sting. Mm-hmm. You know, and we do have a similar thing to the monooxidase-amine inhibitors with acetylcholine in our guts. There could be something that needs to be looked at about the sting being able to actually inject the acetylcholine into particular acupuncture channels in your body. I think that we could potentially see some leaps and bounds in how we treat Parkinson's with some some stinging nettle acupuncture.
There's certainly incredible room for research in this area, and so hopefully just bringing interest to these topics will help to inspire more work, right? More science.
Yeah.
More people also, you know, experimenting in a DIY fashion. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, update on the cyst.
Oh, yeah?
Totally healed.
Totally healed.
Completely healed.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so smooth as a baby's skin.
Success on the home surgery.
I know a lot of people were wondering about that. They, that a bunch of people reached out to me, and they were concerned. They were hoping that I was going to recover. Cheers.
Cheers. Goes tasty tea, huh?
Man, it was good. It was hearty.
Yeah, I was really surprised at the diaphoretic action, the ability to raise my body temperature. Not necessarily that it was a hot tea, it was cool when we were consuming it, but it did bring about some sweating. And that's something to note when an herb makes you sure it's getting things going, like it's part of.
Catalyzing.
Yeah.
Yeah, activating things within the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very neat. Well, I'm excited. I want to look around my property and see if there's any of it growing wild, and if not, I'm certainly going to introduce it this year.
Yeah, you can just take some of the, it's in seed in lots of places because I haven't kept it cut back this year. And so you can just shake it around. It'll go. But for propagation purposes, taking some of the roots and just sticking them in the ground, they take off with a lot more vigor that way, and you've got to harvest a lot sooner.
Cool. So just kind of like what you do with a potato.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or any root.
Yeah, yeah.
Vegetable. Cool.
Yeah.
Neat. So yeah, well, there's a proliferous amount out there. I mean, there is a ton. I've seen it growing over by some of the greenhouse area, like over by the cabin. You know, I know you've got some actually that's propagating in the greenhouse.
Yeah, and that stuff, as we mentioned earlier, the stingers, or they call them trichromes actually, they get a lot more vibrancy. They get a punch when they're grown in the hothouse. Yeah, and I let them grow around all the vegetables and herbs and stuff. There's a lot of folklore around nettles increasing the potency of whatever medicine or fruit that it's growing in companion with. It obviously needs to be looked at, like not all, she can take over or she can be friendly depending on what the dynamics are with the other plants around her. But I see her going really well with fruit trees, or I can see her in an understory around plants that grow tall. She works fine around corn and plants like that.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's that interplay that helps to keep things in balance. I know I was actually just reading somebody's post earlier today about how mint had really gotten out of hand. They had this massive bush, and they were like, oh my God, it's taking over. And, you know, people were like, yeah, don't, stay away from that stuff. Don't ever plant it. It's horrible. But we planted mint on our property, and it's right there with, there's like 2 different varieties, and there was some basil planted with it and some sage. And I think the basil's all but gone, but the sage is still prevalent, and the mint's there, but they're just in perfect harmony, you know, right underneath this little tree, and they haven't ventured outside of that zone into the garden or anything. So.
Yeah, but if you get in there and split up that clump a little bit, you'll have a lot more mint. And mint, like nettles, are really high in calcium and magnesium. It's a great natural pain reliever without actually hitting those endorphin sites, without being something that's cutting the pain response, but helping your body mitigate and be an anti-inflammatory, help the body so it can adjust without having something that's being an actual pain reliever, you know
right.
In a reducing
dulling the system in some kind of way, yeah. So it
Yeah.
stays activated.
Yeah.
That's the danger oftentimes when people are recovering. Not all cases, but a lot of cases, you know, the body needs its full capacity, and anything that we take that depresses the system in any way is not good. It's not beneficial. So if we can avoid doing that, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing too about the mint and sage combination is it really makes a fantastic tea, though. That mixed in with a little honey. I actually tried some of that down at a restaurant in New Jersey with my folks, and it was amazing. And then ever since, you know, it's been picking out of the garden.
Nice.
Yeah, so we'll probably take a trip out there at some point in the future. But back to the nettles, you know, we've talked about some of the swathing and you know, slapping effect and things like that, and also the ingestion of it in various forms and ways. You know, how about what about just like laying the leaves on your skin?
Yeah, and the swabbing or slapping or urticating, it's called. It's actually used as a punishment in Singapore, I think. But if you take how you're relating to it and look at it with a lot of intent, and you're communicating with the plant as you're gently allowing that injection to go in and communicating with the plant on what you want, its biochemical response is, again, going to be tailored for you. I'd encourage people to investigate that.
I think so too. That's very profound because it also ties together with some of the work that's been done in research in accessing the quantum field and being able to influence on a much grander scale energetically by, sort of collapsing your waveform and accessing the quantum field in the way they're talking about doing this, right? It's just kind of like what you were just saying. It's that connection with the intention that's so important. You have to see and feel and know the vision very clearly, what it is that you're going for.
Yeah.
And then also the feeling that goes along with it, right? So the high emotion, right? The courage, the love, the peace of mind, the deep sense of well-being. And those are tremendous activators. When we incorporate those with the vision, we're able to reside in that state of this has already happened, right? I'm already at one with this.
Yeah.
And you're feeling it and residing in it. Then that has the capacity to give you access to the quantum field and influence there, rather than just trying to create with physical activity on the three-dimensional realm.
I can see the nettle working through you as you say that. Those activations of these underlying light fields, the ability to bring about more awareness, more vibrancy. A lot of people are taking choline supplements to get their mind to be a little bit sharper, and it can come right through the nettles without having to go to the store.
I definitely feel a heightening of the energy. I mean, it's, what would I, closely akin to almost like a B3 shot, something like that, almost flushing a little bit. And like you were saying, I could feel this tiny bit of perspiration, on the skin as well. Yeah. But yeah, it's that energizing aspect of it too, which, we talked about the subtle body being activated with the pain points, right? But I also think that there's another component too that's activating, and what that's doing for me, right, is it's also helping me to deepen my connection with the subtle body, which is where the emotional body, the emotions run along that same network. So when we can access the felt connection with the energy body, with the subtle body, and then we, in addition, charge it, right, magnetically with that emotion. And we have the intention, which is electrifying the whole thing. Now we have an electromagnetic force that we're connecting with and harmonizing with. Very powerful.
Yeah. Good stuff. Fiber. We didn't really touch on that one much at all. It's been used for, I don't know, a long time. Bronze Age, before then, probably goes back to as before recorded history. People using it like you would a cordage, make clothes out of it.
So is that where the cash crop aspect comes in?
No, the cash crop would be that it's just so high in nutrients. Like I read this one article about a farmer in Africa, totally escaping poverty through cultivating nettles, bringing it to market. In Africa, they have a similar situation where they're just nutrient deprived, not enough green stuff that's being consumed, a loss of their folk traditions. Not completely, but it's there as it's prevalent around the world. And he was able to cultivate nettles and bring it to market, and he was making, it was a lot. It was like the equivalent, I would be making up numbers, but it was a salary that you could sustain yourself on in America. It was rather impressive.
That is impressive.
And in America, like, we're always, you can't get good organically grown nettles in bulk. Like, the big herb distributors are always sold out, and they rarely ever have organically grown, or even nettles that's grown in America.
Well, that leads us back to one of the principles that, this conversation is based on, which is that the more we stop relying on others, right, for our access to these plants, right, the more we can take it under our own responsibility to connect with them, to grow them, cultivate them, and have that living mutual respect connection, then we're doing much more than we've even been talking about here, because it's also about liberation. It's about personal freedom.
Yeah, sovereignty. Yeah, that whole rags to riches story, the Willy Wonka story about chocolate, it's embedded in chocolate, but nettles is one of the other plants that carries those spirits inside her, for sure. Yeah. Nettles chocolate. Maybe that's another episode.
Yes. Nettles mint chocolate.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you very much. We're going to get into some really cool details up and coming.
Yeah.
About some of the topics that we, sort of just broached on this podcast, on some of the other ones. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Thanks again, as always. Thanks for sharing your space with all of us. And
thanks for being here with us. Yeah.
We look forward to connecting on some upcoming episodes. We did have a viewer inquiring about, how do we get a hold of genetics, seeds, and things like that for some of the plants that we'll be talking about. So we do want to let you know that we're working on, accessing and opening up avenues for that, and we'll keep you guys abreast of details as they come to light. Thanks again so much for watching. Once again, this has been High on Spirit.
This transmission is coming to you from deep in the jungles of central Maine.